At the 100 Flowers banquet, Xiao Yunheng's childhood sweetheart barged in and slapped me across the face in front of everyone. And you, a young lady from a prestigious clan, dared to snatch up what this lady discarded? The girl stood stubborn and proud, yet her reddened eyes fixed on Xiao Yunheng, who stood shielding me. He spoke coldly. Princess, I urge you to conduct yourself with dignity. Everyone assumed this was a scene of the old flame being overshadowed by the new. Only I knew he'd shielded me with his body the instant she struck, blocking every chance I had to strike back. When Xiao Yunheng spoke those words, Xia Wenyu's eyes filled with tears. Her once stubborn chin now looked pitifully vulnerable. Pitiful indeed, if not for the stinging ringing in my ears from that public slap. Xia Wenying pointed at me, shielded behind him, tears rolling like pearls. Xiao Yunheng, would you truly sever ties with me for such a shameless woman? Faintly, I seemed to hear the snickering of the other noble ladies around her as she spoke. How utterly shameful, I said. A country bumpkin dares compete with a princess for a general's hand? Who in the capital doesn't know of Princess Mingning and General Zhao's past? Yet she still had the audacity to challenge the princess? Who could have guessed that every time the princess declared their bond severed, General Xiao would bow his head in apology, only for them to reconcile? They were meant for each other. Yet she had to meddle. Serves her right to lose face. Indeed, even before I came to the capital, Xiao Yunheng and Princess Mingning, the one most favored by His Majesty, had been locked in endless conflict. Essentially, the spoiled princess couldn't stand the cold-faced general, so she repeatedly provoked and tormented him. Yet time and again, he rescued her. Thus, it was inevitable they eventually developed mutual affection. But the princess was willfully capricious, while the general remained steadfastly composed. Two people whose natures clashed so fundamentally were bound to be perpetually at odds. Constantly arguing. Countless times, they parted in anger. Until the final time. In a fit of rage, Xia Wenying tore apart the perfume pouch Xiao Yunheng's late mother had sewn for him. Only then did Xiao Yunheng truly lose his temper, never bowing his head again. Yet, in the past, Xiao Yunheng would always yield in the end. To others, their breakup seemed merely the quarrels of star-crossed lovers. They'd reconcile sooner or later. But Xia Wenying waited and waited, only to hear that Xiao Yunheng had brought another woman to the 100 Flowers banquet. That woman was me. Seen this way, I must have been presumptuous, courting humiliation. So I deserve others' scorn, their cold stares and mockery. Yet as I touch the dense, stinging pain on my left cheek, I vaguely recall the one who nodded in agreement to the emperor's matchmaking, the one who approached first, was clearly Xiao Yunheng, a noble woman, publicly slapped at the 100 Flowers banquet. No matter how you looked at it, it was a shameful disgrace beyond endurance. If there was truly a shred of dignity left, I should have struck back. I wanted to do just that. But when I looked up, Xiao Yunheng stood before me. Some murmured, old love can't compete with new affection. After all, only I knew he had shielded me with his body the instant he saw the slap coming, blocking any chance I had to strike back. I smiled bitterly. My heart grew icy cold. Xiao Yunheng, is this what you meant by my heart belongs only to you? And no one else? Yes. This wasn't the first time Xiao Yunheng and I had met. If his brief 2-year relationship with Princess Mingning, Xia Wenying, could be called a love-hate dynamic or childhood sweethearts, then what should I call my years of knowing him since youth? Of companionship and mutual understanding? My mother was the eldest sister of the emperor. To pave his path, she married my father alone. From then on, she journeyed to the frontier and never returned to the capital. That was when Xiao Yunheng and I first met. He was only 14 then, disliked by his stepmother. After a tearful plea to his father, He was promptly sent to the frontier military camp for discipline. An unloved son of a noble family, stranded thousands of miles from the capital. Bullying and exclusion were inevitable. The worst incident occurred when they stole the only memento his deceased mother had left him, the sachets hand-sewn by Lady Xiao herself. He charged at them like a madman, ignoring the fists and kicks landing on his body. But he still couldn't get it back. They laughed and cursed him a worthless good-for-nothing, a motherless stray dog. It was my mother who scolded them in time and rescued him. When she took him to see the doctor, she even shed tears. Your mother was once an old friend of mine. I never imagined she would pass away so early. She was far away at the frontier, knowing little of what had transpired. Seeing the son of an old friend again, she couldn't help but feel moved. Xiao Yunheng's eyes also reddened. As for me, I picked up the torn sachets with my own hands and smiled at him, saying, "Don't cry, brother Yunheng. Nianqing's needlework is excellent. I'll mend them perfectly, you won't even notice." But why did his tears only flow harder? Still young and naive, I scratched my head in confusion. Those troublemaking soldiers were dealt with by my father according to military law. Xiao Yunheng was kept by his side, gradually honing his skills. When I saw him again, the initial gloom had faded from his features. His brow and eyes now held a steadier, more resolute look. Mother beckoned me closer. Pointing at him with her folding fan, she smiled and said, "Nianqing, from now on, he is your father's adopted son. You must truly call him brother." This was meant as playful banter among the adults. Yet Xiao Yunheng flushed crimson, visibly flustered. I tilted my head, then quietly pulled him aside while the adults discussed serious matters. Nianqing. He was 2 years older than me. Seeing me about to speak, he noticed my shushing gesture instead. Then, quietly, he pulled out something he'd hidden for ages from behind his back. "Look! Did I embroider it well?" I exclaimed happily to him. "This took me forever to mend, didn't it? Isn't it just like the original? Now, will brother Yunheng stop crying?" Mother said Xiao Yunheng was pitiful. Having lost his mother, he gained a stepfather. At such a young age, he was sent to this bitterly cold frontier. If she, an old acquaintance of Xiao Yunheng's mother, hadn't lent a hand, who could guarantee how long he'd last? I was very obedient. So when mending this sachet, I put my heart into it. My hands were pricked with needles so many times they bled. I thought Xiao Yunheng would be happy, but he just stared fixedly at the pouch and at my wounded hands. Then he cried. Life at the frontier was both turbulent and quiet. Xiao Yunheng truly became a young general who rode into battle. Each time he returned, he always brought something for me. Sometimes it was a jade ring seized from the barbarians, or wildflowers plucked along his journey home. Then he'd coax me. "Stop crying. Stop crying. I'm perfectly fine, aren't I?" With Nianqing waiting for me, I'd never dream of dying. But I still couldn't hold back my tears, for I was truly terrified. When the barbarians invaded in my childhood, Father rode off on horseback just like him. For 3 days and nights, Mother never slept, her anxiety palpable to my childish mind. What we awaited was Father, covered in blood. The physician said had he arrived later, Father might never have regained consciousness. I will never forget the scars covering Father's body, and I dreaded that Xiao Yunheng might suffer the same fate. So every time he led his troops into battle, my heart pounded in terror. When he met me, Mother teased me, "My daughter. I fear I can't keep her here much longer." Xiao Yunheng and I exchanged a glance. Both our faces flushed. But faster than the natural course of events came an imperial edict from the capital. Xiao Yunheng had achieved remarkable feats at the frontier these past years. Lord Xiao had finally remembered his eldest son, petitioning the emperor for rewards. and for the Xiao family. And so Xiao Yunheng returned to the capital by imperial decree. Before leaving, he looked at me, waved, and smiled. Nianqing, wait for me to return. That wait stretched into 2 years. Yet it was I who went to the capital first. The reason was simple. I had grown up. It was time for me to marry. My uncle, the emperor, felt indebted to Mother. He wrote a letter, hoping Mother would bring me to the capital, first, to find a husband for me. Second, to reunite my imperial grandmother with her daughter. But then, unrest erupted at the frontier. Mother refused to leave father behind. So I had to depart first. It was then that Xiao Yunheng and I met again. I didn't know he'd just quarreled with Xiao Weining. He'd been late to their meeting for some reason. The young woman tore the sachet to shreds in her rage. Excuses! Nothing but excuses. You're probably sneaking off to meet some other woman behind my back. This sachet doesn't look like something your mother would give you. It's probably the stolen goods of some fox spirit you're secretly consorting with. Is it that woman from beyond the frontier you just mentioned? Before she could finish, Xiao Yunheng bellowed at her and shoved her. She tumbled to the ground. She stared back in disbelief. But the man who had never truly lost his temper with her now didn't even glance at her. Instead, he bent down, eyes red, to pick up the torn pieces of the sash. The girl instantly stamped her foot and wailed. Xiao Yunheng, how dare you treat me like this? Don't you dare regret this. She turned and ran away. She expected Xiao Yunheng to chase after her, coax her back, and whisper sweet nothings until she reluctantly forgave him. But Xiao Yunheng didn't chase her. When I arrived, this was the scene I witnessed. A slender hand handed him the last shred of cloth. He looked up. Her eyes sparkled, just as they had at the frontier. Brother Yunheng, how did you tear it again? Newly arrived. I knew nothing of his entanglements with another woman. I was simply glad that after 2 years, we had finally met again. Naturally, I didn't catch the flicker of panic in Xiao Yunheng's eyes as he faltered and spoke. Nianqing, Uncle Emperor and Grandmother Imperial both cherished me deeply. Especially Grandmother Imperial, whenever she saw me, she would embrace me, her heart aching as she lamented my hardships. As for Xiao Yunheng, they hadn't concealed from him that my purpose in returning this time was to select a husband and marry. Not to mention, Mother had hinted at Xiao Yunheng and my past in her letters. Undoubtedly, Xiao Yunheng was the son-in-law Mother favored. She didn't know Xiao Yunheng had become entangled with another woman in the capital. Just as I didn't know why Xiao Yunheng had paused. Not quite as joyful as before. My perceptive emperor uncle looked at him meaningfully. I hear Princess Mingning has caused you distress these past days. The girl has been spoiled and acts with reckless boldness. If you truly harbor grievances, speak plainly to me, I shall show no partiality. Princess Mingning? I froze. Was she the one who tore Xiao Yunheng's mother's sachet? Xiao Yunheng paused, then knelt and declared, Your servant has long been at odds with Princess Mingning. Her recent actions have been utterly intolerable. Your servant thanks your majesty for upholding justice. This signaled his intent to sever all ties with her. It was precisely the answer the emperor desired. One was the princess he had watched grow up, the other, his niece to whom he often felt indebted. He could not bear to see Xiao Yunheng wavering between them, nor could he tolerate discord within the imperial family. Thus, Princess Mingning was confined to her quarters for 3 months. Today marked her release. She had not waited for Xiao Yunheng's apology. Instead, she learned he had spent these months inseparable from another woman, even attending the 100 Flowers banquet together. When had a princess, born of royal blood, ever endured such humiliation? Fuming, she stormed in and slapped me before everyone. And you, a young lady from a distinguished family, eagerly snatched up what this lady discarded? One incident after another had culminated in this present situation. Xiao Yunheng immediately shielded me behind him, his voice tinged with displeasure. Nianqing and I have always conducted ourselves with propriety. Princess. Choose your words carefully. But Xia Wenyong seemed stung, her anger flaring further. Nianqing. Nianqing, so intimate now. Are we? And you're defending her? She knew about us, yet used His Majesty's authority and her mother's distant marriage to force you into marriage. What else is that but shamelessness? A mere country bumpkin from the frontier, what's so great about him? Why does everyone side with her? Wei Ning! Xiao Yunheng's sharp voice startled everyone present. He was truly enraged. He was bound to be enraged, because he had truly served at the frontier. He knew how bitter the winds there were, how high the piles of bodies piled up defending against barbarian invaders, sacrificing their lives for the nation. Meanwhile, far away in the capital city, how could they revel in peace and prosperity, lost in a world of luxury and excess? So how dare you dismiss it with a flippant remark about some country bumpkin who merely served at the frontier? From the very beginning, it was you who took issue with me. You provoked me repeatedly, yet I yielded time and again. I have shown you every kindness and courtesy. How can you claim there is any personal animosity between us? He spoke each word deliberately, his voice echoing before Xia Weining's ashen face. Nianqing and I grew up together. When she came to the capital, protecting her was only natural, especially since General Liu is also my mentor. Therefore, Princess, I implore you to conduct yourself with dignity and cease this entanglement. The marriage. You truly intend to sever ties with me? Xia Wening finally grasped the gravity of the situation, tears rolling down her cheeks. Xiao Yunheng met her gaze without flinching. We should never have crossed paths in the first place. What severing is there to speak of? You're lying. Have you forgotten taking me horseback riding in the hunting grounds? Pulling me from the lake? Sneaking medicine to me when you feared I'd caught a chill? What do all those things count for? Xiao Yunheng stiffened. He didn't even dare look back at her expression. He only said, accompanying the princess to the hunting grounds was her deliberate provocation. I had no choice but to go. Picking you up from the lake was purely an act of necessity to save a life. As for delivering medicine, he turned away from Xia Wening's brimming tears, merely shifting blame onto me, fearing the princess might fall ill. Xia Wening staggered, stumbling half a step backward. Xiao Yunheng, how heartless you are. How heartless, she cried out, stubbornly wiping her tears as she prepared to storm off. But she didn't get far. Because I spoke. Wait. My voice caught everyone off guard. Xiao Yunheng turned back nervously, looking at me, Nianqing. What was he nervous about? Was he worried about the wound on my face? Or afraid I'd become entangled, seeking revenge against Xia Wening? If that was truly the case, then I could only say, he really knew people well. Xia Wening halted her steps, glaring at me with hatred. Stubbornly. What do you want to say now? Feeling quite pleased with yourself, aren't you? He's actually speaking up for you? It's just because you have those parents guarding the border, isn't it? It's just because you've been stationed there for a while longer, isn't it? What's so great about that? You're not dead. But I am. Smack! A sharp slap echoed. Her cheek instantly swelled and reddened. But it wasn't over. 3 more slaps followed in quick succession. Each landed heavily on Xia Weing's face. The force was immense. By the time anyone reacted, it was already too late. Weing! I was shoved hard, but the person pushing me didn't even glance at me. I frantically pulled Xia Weing into my arms. Xia Weing sobbed uncontrollably. Ah, Hung. It hurts so much. She actually hit me. Even my own mother never brought herself to strike me. I might as well die. If I die, will you all finally be satisfied? With that, she dashed toward a pillar, her resolve fierce and unyielding. Xiao Yunheng lost all restraint. He scooped her up, ready to leave. Midway, as if struck by a thought, he paused and turned back. His brow furrowed slightly as he looked at me disapprovingly. Nianqing, you shouldn't have hit her. I've already reprimanded Wei. Why are you still fixated on this? She was spoiled and indulged since childhood, so she lacks understanding. But you are not like that. Striking someone in public is improper and utterly unacceptable. With that, he carried Xia Weiniang away without looking back, completely oblivious. How much more pain must I have felt when his shove sent me crashing into the table edge? Miss. The maid hurried forward anxiously. The gazes of those around me held either amusement or contempt. It seemed they were all saying, "See? Just as expected. The consequence of overestimating oneself. Did you really think you could compete with the princess?" But I didn't care. If that slap shattered most of my affection for Xiao Yunheng, then his shove completely extinguished the last remnants of my feelings for him. I steadied myself and declared, "I must see my imperial grandmother at once." My uncle, the emperor, had watched Xia Wenyong grow up. Could his guilt toward me outweigh his favoritism toward her? I cannot guarantee it. But my imperial grandmother, she has always recognized only one daughter. And naturally, only one granddaughter. After parting at the frontier, 2 long years passed. In the 3 months since Xiao Yunheng and I met again, amidst pouring rain and howling winds, we walked down divergent paths. He turned away, Xia Weiniang in his arms. I, too, boarded the carriage, slowly entering the depths of the palace. When I saw that old lady smiling at me, calling me Nianqing, my eyes welled up completely. The pent-up grievances overflowed. I knelt before her, weeping, and she embraced me. What on earth is this? The old lady saw my swollen cheek and panicked. Through my tears, I gritted my teeth. "Grandmother, I beg you, cancel my marriage to Xiao Yunheng. Xiao Yunheng, I, Lu Nianqing, will not marry him." Though I grew up at the frontier, my skin inherited my mother's, exceptionally fair. Thus the red, swollen handprint stood out starkly. Besides, I'm no one to swallow my grievances. Grievances that must be voiced shall be voiced clearly. My mother journeyed far to the frontier to marry the current emperor. My father guarded the frozen wasteland for decades for the sake of the realm. Yet I, the daughter of such loyal subjects, was publicly slapped in the face right after the emperor had brought me back with such pomp and ceremony. What kind of justice is this? Sure enough, as my words fell, even my maternal grandmother, usually so kind and gentle, showed a flicker of anger. Xia Weiniang, that wretched creature again? Sensing something amiss, I asked, could there be some hidden circumstances? The Empress Dowager gave a cold laugh. Only then did I learn that Xia Weiniang's mother, Liang Shulan, had been the emperor's first love during his impoverished youth. Back then, the emperor held no favor and was certainly not a contender for the throne. How could the Liang family have possibly given their daughter to him? Instead, they had betrothed her to a noble scion aligned with another prince. It was said that before her marriage, Liang Shulan had secretly slipped the emperor a handkerchief. This became an eternal regret in his heart. Later, when the emperor ascended the throne, that noble scion died suddenly and unexpectedly. Yet Liang Shulan and her daughter suffered no repercussions whatsoever. Instead, one was granted the title of first-rank noble consort, while the other became the Princess of Mingning. Publicly, it was said Liang Shulan had been close to the emperor's beloved elder sister. Each time he saw her, he would extend his affection to her by association. Thus, he formally adopted her as his sworn sister. He was also Xia Weining's maternal uncle. But how come I never knew my mother had a close confidant named Liang Shuan? My imperial grandmother sighed. When Xiao Yunheng declared to His Majesty that he had severed all ties with Xia Weining, cutting off all affection and loyalty, I truly believed he had no fondness for that Xia Weining. Moreover, His Majesty, fearing you might dwell on it, forbade anyone from mentioning her in your presence. Who would have thought he too was so fickle? Disappointment flickered in the old lady's eyes. I could only offer a bitter smile. Fickle? That was putting it mildly. He claimed to despise her to the core, refusing any entanglement. Yet when that woman slapped me, his first concern wasn't how badly I was hurt or how humiliating it was to suffer such an insult in public. Instead, he feared I might retaliate, that I might return the slap to her face, making her look like a fool. I still remember Xiao Yunheng's icy gaze when he saw the wound on Xia Wenyu's face, as if he were looking at an enemy. Perhaps he himself didn't realize that the last time he had looked at someone with that expression was when those soldiers ruined his late mother's incense pouch. My whole body grew cold, and I felt nothing but irony. How laughable that I had clung to a youthful promise, only to find it was nothing but a joke in the end. Therefore, Xiao Yunheng, with you like this, what is there for me to marry? Seeing my silent tears, my imperial grandmother's eyes flashed with pity as she drew me into her embrace. If you won't marry him, then don't. What does that Xiao family even amount to? Without Xiao Yunheng, there are plenty of suitors lining up to marry this old woman's granddaughter. With a sweeping gesture of her hand, she declared, by my command, this marriage between him and you is hereby annulled. Xiao Yunheng would never know that as he left, clutching another woman in his arms with heartfelt tenderness. That single, light-hearted sentence swept away all the affection we had shared over the years, leaving nothing but ashes. 13. That night, bearing this imperial decree, I departed from my imperial grandmother's chambers. Before I departed, she patted my hand reassuringly. Your mother wrote today, the border conflicts have ceased. She'll return within days. When the time comes to choose a husband, we'll take our time selecting. I didn't know if my imperial uncle would take revenge for Xia Wening's sake, avenging his lost love. But I knew this, if my mother returned to find someone exploiting her name to bask in glory and wealth, only to turn around and strike her own daughter, she would make that person pay dearly. I was also curious. When mother returned, facing her eldest sister who had paved her way by going to the frontier, and a tearful woman who had become someone else's wife, which one would my imperial uncle choose? But I never got to see mother return. Instead, Xiao Yunheng came back. He looked haggard, clearly having spent much effort and words trying to appease that woman he called disgustingly insolent. Seeing me, he said wearily, Nianqing, could we postpone discussing our marriage for a while? But regret washed over him the moment the words left his lips. How peculiar, our meetings never occur at the right time. Take now, for instance. Rumors swirled about two women vying for the same man at the 100 Flowers banquet, even exchanging slaps. Princess Mingning wept before the emperor himself. Even Lady Xia, who'd always kept her distance from the emperor, entered the palace. I heard the emperor dismissed all attendants and spent an hour reminiscing with an old acquaintance. When they departed, both Lady Xia and the emperor had reddened eyes. Yet the emperor did not summon me immediately, just as I hadn't sought him out right after that incident. My maternal grandmother comforted me. If he's foolish enough to take his anger out on his own niece for the sake of an outsider, then don't blame this old woman for turning against him. But despite her words, I could sense, these past days, the palace servants' attitudes toward me have grown noticeably colder. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been unable to find anyone to ask for directions. Accidentally stumbling upon that young eunuch being bullied in the cold palace, The boy looked barely 12. Yet his eyes burned with the ferocity of a lone wolf. The older eunuchs trampled him underfoot, crushing even the tassel he clutched desperately into the mud. They sneered. "This must be the story your foot washing maid mother spun for you. You clung to it daily, thinking it some rare treasure, only to find it's worth not a single copper coin. What are you staring at? Think you're someone special? You're just a bastard child discarded by some wealthy family. Useless. Motherless brat." It was then that Xiao Yunheng found me. "Nianqing, I heard from palace servants you were heading this way." Then he spoke. "Nianqing, could we postpone discussing our marriage for a while?" Why did regret wash over me the moment the words left my lips? Probably because it was too familiar. It mirrored our very first meeting. He too had been trampled upon, though what was crushed into the mud was merely a sachet. Those people had mocked him as a worthless, motherless mongrel. It was me, my mother and I, who rescued him with our own hands. Xiao Yunheng looked as if struck by lightning. His eyes filled with regret and guilt as he turned to me. He tried to explain. "There's nothing between her and me. It was Wei. She has a fiery temper. The moment she heard about our marriage, she threatened to take her own life. Nianqing, you're the kindest. That was a human life. You." I raised my hand, cutting him off. Under his gaze, I walked toward the disheveled little eunuch. I noticed that he and his fellow eunuchs had long since shed their earlier arrogance. They knelt on the ground, trembling with fear, begging for mercy. The latter, now freed from his torment, lunged fiercely toward the mud-covered Ying Luo. But he grabbed at thin air. He raised his head, glaring viciously at me as I picked up the tassel. Then he froze, because I skillfully tied the previously loose tassel back together, paying no mind to the mud that had stained it. I simply handed it back to him, my voice gentle. "Since it's a keepsake from your late mother, you should keep it safe." The little eunuch cradled it protectively in his arms, his voice still carrying a hint of childishness as he declared resolutely, "I won't. If anyone dares damage it again, I'll make sure they meet a miserable end." Suddenly amused, I chuckled. "If it were a girl, you wouldn't fall for her?" Xiao Yunheng stiffened. The little eunuch stared at me strangely, as if looking at a fool. "This is my mother's keepsake. Whoever damages it, I'd tear them limb from limb. How could I possibly fall for them?" At this point, Xiao Yunheng finally couldn't hold back, his embarrassment turning to fury. "Nianqing, Wei and I are completely innocent. She's just spoiled, prone to making mistakes out of arrogance. But it's never intentional. I treat her like an immature younger sister. Why must you deliberately humiliate her, and me?" He stepped forward to take my hand, just like before. Except back then, he'd take my hand to lead me to indulge in romantic escapades. But now, he said, "Let's stop this. Why get jealous over a child?" I merely evaded his grasp and looked at him. "But Xiao Yunheng, she's my age. If she's a child, then what am I? How can that be the same?" Xiao Yunheng nearly blurted out. "When Ying grew up in the capital, never knowing hardship, always protected and pampered, it's no wonder she's naive about the world. But you..." His words trailed off abruptly. I finished them for him. But I was born on the distant frontier. Even as a general's daughter, no one by the battlefield indulges or spoils a little girl. Nor is there time or patience for a child's whims. Xiao Yunheng had seen it. He knew military law was as unyielding as a mountain, with no exceptions. And I, or any child on the frontier, were taught from birth to be sensible and obedient, never to become a burden to others. We couldn't throw tantrums, for our parents were already weary. We couldn't wander freely, for barbarians and spies lurked everywhere. And we certainly couldn't make mistakes, Because so many of us had already lost our parents. Those still living must fight enemies and defend the nation. Those who died could offer no protection or safety net. So how could we possibly be the same as Xiao Weiniang? I looked at Xiao Yunheng, my eyes brimming with disappointment and sorrow. He flinched. Stung. Nianqing. That's not what I meant. But clearly, he had once said, whatever Nianqing does, I will protect her. Whoever dares to hurt Nianqing, I will make them pay tenfold. 100-fold. The adults present then had all burst into laughter. Only the youth stood tall, utterly earnest. He was a different man from the General Xiao who now stood guard beside the woman, eyes brimming with wariness as if I were some flood or beast. Suddenly, an unprecedented weariness washed over me. I spoke. Forget it. Forget it. Xiao Yunheng. Xiao Yunheng froze in shock. But I continued. Do as you wish. I'll agree to everything. His sorrow instantly turned to joy. Really? I knew you were always magnanimous and kind-hearted. Never one to hold grudges over trifles. Since that's the case, we'll postpone our marriage until Weiniang is ready. We have all the time in the world. When the time comes, I'll marry you in grand style. I won't let you suffer any injustice. His eyes sparkled with amusement. He looked just like he did in his youth. But Xiao Yunheng, I've only been back in the capital for a few months, and you've already made me endure so much hardship. Very well. Our marriage was already over anyway. What difference does my consent make now? He should be asking his future wife. It's not me anyway. I watched him turn away to share this news with Xiao Weiniang, feeling utterly bored. As he left, he said, at first, I too despised her reckless ways, demanding only the finest delicacies, discarding new gowns at whim, confident her imperial uncle would provide more. Back then, I thought of you. You too are the emperor's niece. Yet you wore the same dress for years and never once complained about a simple vegetable soup. That's why I always felt she couldn't hold a candle to you. But later I realized she was simply spoiled by privilege. Those silken robes and delicacies were her birthright, not stolen or seized. Though haughty and capricious, her nature wasn't truly wicked. There's a misunderstanding between you two. At the mid-autumn banquet, I'll bring you together. Once you've laid aside your differences, you'll surely find common ground. I'm afraid I've disappointed him. At the mid-autumn banquet, Xiao Weiniang appeared with her face fully healed. She shot me a vicious glare. You bitch! You hurt me and think you can pretend nothing happened? Just you wait. My uncle will make you pay dearly and avenge me. I didn't flinch. Nianqing awaits the show. They were like oil and water. Xiao Weiniang spoke those words with great satisfaction. She snorted and ran to a woman, clinging to her arm and acting coy. From the high seats, no one noticed the gentle gaze the emperor cast upon the two. The woman wore simple, elegant robes, her smile radiant. Pearls glistened on her head, making her stunningly beautiful. Who knew what Xiao Weiniang had whispered to her? She turned and gave me a faint, dismissive glance. I accepted it calmly. Coincidentally, by all rights, as the daughter of a returning hero and the emperor's niece, this banquet should have unfolded exactly as my maternal grandmother had arranged. Seated beside her, beneath the emperor's gaze, I would have been the sole object of honor, so that all would know my status was not one to be trifled with. Yet the empty space meant for me across the table suddenly held an additional seat. It was precisely Xiao Weiniang's place. The Empress Dowager's face, which had been smiling moments before, froze at this sight. She shot her son a furious glance, but the emperor kept his gaze fixed straight ahead, as if this were the natural order of things. Unsurprisingly, the court ladies and noblewomen most adept at reading the room began whispering. We thought the return of the princess's daughter would mean Princess Mingning would fall out of favor, after all. She is the emperor's own niece. Yet, unexpectedly, His Majesty shows such favor toward Princess Mingning. This very seat, does it not signal to others that even with the princess's daughter back, Princess Mingning remains someone no one can afford to slight? Xiao Yunheng, fearing I might fly into a rage over this, specifically cautioned me. It's merely a seat. Princess Mingning always occupied your seat before. But now she has yielded it. We shouldn't be so petty about it. We? Who is we? I turned a deaf ear. Amidst the clinking of cups and dishes, the emperor spoke slowly. General Liu is a loyal servant who guards our borders. The eldest princess is also my elder sister, born of the same mother. Naturally, all should honor Nianqing with utmost respect. Yet, given the imperial family's long tradition of harmony, this sudden discord, Nianqing. He turned to me under the gaze of the beautiful woman. Have you nothing to say? The words fell, and the hall fell silent. The Empress Dowager was the first to grasp the meaning behind his words. She stared at him in disbelief, as if seeing her own son for the first time. Truly, she could accept her son's partiality, allowing Xia Wenying to stand equal with me. But she never imagined her son would show such favoritism that he would demand me apologize to Xia Wenying before everyone. I calmed my imperial grandmother, who was about to speak, and stood up to say, "This humble daughter has nothing to say." The emperor's expression darkened. Xia Wenying couldn't contain herself any longer and leapt forward, shouting angrily, "You wretched woman! You dared slap this princess. Yet you stand here so brazenly." I sneered coldly. Was it not the princess who struck first? Inger was indeed rash and impolite, impulsively injuring Miss Liu. But it was merely one slap. Miss Liu could have simply returned it. Why did she strike 3 more times? A soft, trembling voice spoke up. Liang Shulan gazed at me through tears, her expression mirroring any mother protecting her wronged daughter. Inger lost her father at a young age. We've struggled to survive as a widow and orphan, far less privileged than Miss Liu's distinguished family. If Miss Liu felt wronged, she could have struck me. Shulan would have endured any scolding or blows. Why must she take it out on the thoughtless Wenying? Her sobs continued, tears streaming down her face like rain on pear blossoms. Xia Wenying grew frantic. Mother, what have you done wrong? She's the shameless one, seducing another man's husband. And now she dares to demand favors based on her uncle's so-called merits. Just because he guarded the border for 20 years? Uncle is the son of heaven, they must obey his commands. What right does he have to claim credit? Liang Shulan stopped Xia Wenying and shook her head. Inger, enough. The Liu family are court meritorious officials. Even His Majesty shows them deference. Miss Liu's arrogance is to be expected. These words ignited a fresh surge of anger in the emperor's already pained heart. For under heaven, which ruler does not fear ministers whose achievements overshadow their sovereign? My father has been widely praised these years. To say he doesn't care would be a lie. Nianqing, kneel at once. Without a moment's hesitation, he barked coldly at me. My eldest sister has always been gentle and kind. When did she raise such a vicious daughter? Apologize to the Lady of Shuo and the princess at once. I remained unmoved. This servant has committed no crime. Why should I apologize? It was His Majesty and the Empress Dowager who first proposed this marriage. General Xiao himself agreed to it. And it was the princess who stormed into the banquet and struck first. Why should Nianqing apologize? My gaze swept coldly over Xia Wenying, smug with triumph, and Liang Shulan, sobbing behind her hand. I continued. On what grounds? Insolent. Because I am the son of heaven. Regardless of whether you are at fault here, even if you are not, what I say is right. And what I say is wrong. Do you dare to disobey? The long-buried suspicion surged wildly within him as he narrowed his eyes and looked down at me. Or is this the etiquette you learned at the frontier? Your eyes see only your father, not the Son of Heaven? When the Son of Heaven raged, none dared speak, much less risk the capital offense of treason with a wrong answer. Yet I stood my ground, not yielding an inch. Beneath our shared bloodline, our similar brows and eyes held not a shred of warmth. Liang Shulan, dabbing her tears with a handkerchief, spoke in a feeble voice. Miss Lu is of noble birth and proud nature. If she refuses to apologize, Shulan dares not take any action. But Miss Lu just claimed she did nothing wrong? Forgive my frankness. But while Ingner was wrong to strike her, Miss Lu could have retaliated or sought justice from His Majesty. Why strike 3 more blows? Could it be Miss Lu intends to deny responsibility for these as well? You must know others witnessed this at the banquet. Not just you. Wouldn't you agree, General Xiao? She looked down. Xiao Yunheng sat at his place, his face stern, saying nothing. Xia Wenying, however, grew increasingly agitated. She addressed him. You promised that day while applying medicine that you'd always protect me. Xiao Yunheng, if you lied to me, I'll find a pillar and smash my head against it. Such was her nature. Refusal met with tears, tantrums, and threats of suicide. Xiao Yunheng once told me she'd do it, so he had no choice but to yield. I'm only asking if it's possible. The reason she'd do it is because someone would always stop her. She knows nothing bad will ever happen to her. Xiao Yunheng froze at the words, but quickly dismissed the thought. Nianqing, how could you think that of Wenying? No matter how immature she is, she'd never gamble with her own life. This time, Xia Wenying truly intended to throw herself against the pillar. Liang Shulan cried as she tried to stop her, the scene descending into chaos. Finally, enough! I watched silently as the veins on Xiao Yunheng's knuckles bulged. He snapped his head up, unable to meet my gaze. I knew he'd have to explain himself afterward. Explain that this was only to save Xia Wenying's life, and that once I returned to the capital, I'd have everything. Now that Xia Wenying had lost both her uncle and imperial grandmother, I should make allowances for her. So he stepped forward, kneeling without meeting my eyes. His voice strained. That day, the princess was indeed at fault first. But I had already reprimanded and mediated. The matter should have ended there. I never expected Miss Lu to suddenly turn hostile. Thus, this incident. I stared at the floor as his trembling voice continued. Miss Lu was also at fault. Suddenly, I felt an overwhelming urge to laugh, even though I had long given up hope. Hearing those words, I realized I could still feel sorrow. Beside me, my imperial uncle's angry voice rang out. What more is there to say? Quickly admit your mistake. I see your time at the frontier has made you forget your place. Across from him, Xia Wenying wiped her tears with a smile, lifting her chin and declaring loudly, Princess Wenying won't accept her apology. Princess Wenying will strike back. Just as she struck this princess will strike her back twice as hard. Xiao Yunheng, who had kept his head bowed, was stunned by Xia Wenying's demand. He looked up in shock. Princess. No one contradicted her. Not even my imperial uncle. That meant tacit approval. Was this a lesson for me? Or a slap in the face to the Lu family army? Thousands of miles away. To intimidate them? Xia Wenying, triumphant, stepped forward and raised her hand. Her imperial grandmother sighed. I smiled at the person standing opposite, who had been watching for who knew how long, and said, Look, mother, this is how they treat us. My mother. The reigning princess stood at the doorway, dressed in sturdy travel clothes. She bore the marks of a long journey. Once a pampered princess, a delicate flower of the imperial family. Now, the frost and wind of the frontier had etched a few more lines of hardship upon her face. She had ridden her horse at full gallop all the way to see her daughter sooner. Driven by an urgent longing to return home, she also wished to see relatives she hadn't met in decades. But what she witnessed upon her arrival was her own younger brother, whom she had once supported, slapping her niece in full view of everyone. All for another woman, another man's daughter. The son of an old friend she had always protected with kindness had become the witness testifying to her daughter's crimes. Clang! Liang Shulan's sobs ceased instantly. The emperor rose in panic. His wine cup fell to the floor. His voice trembled. Eldest sister. She advanced step by step. Dust and grime from her journey clung to her, her gaze cold as ice. Having hastily attended to her husband's border conflicts, dried blood still clung to her shoelaces. So you're that so-called eldest princess? Only Xia Weiniang, ignorant of the danger, addressed her mother. You're here just in time. Your daughter dared strike me. Now I'll strike her back right before your eyes. Weiniang. Stop! Xiao Yunheng snapped back to his senses and spoke swiftly. Too late. Xia Weiniang had already been kicked to the ground. Curled up in pain, she wailed, Uncle. Weiniang hurts so much. That woman dared to hit Weiniang. In the past, when she cried out like this, her emperor uncle would always take her side, punishing even me without exception. But this time, no matter how she wailed, her imperial uncle stood frozen in place. Not a single word escaped his lips. Mother shielded me in her arms, gazing up at the lofty sun of heaven, and declared, Wen Yi, is this the care you promised my sister in your letter? To help her look after her daughter? Wen Yi was the son of heaven's given name. They shared the same mother, bound by the closest of blood ties. Since childhood, he had feared and respected his imperial sister. Not to mention during the fiercest struggles for the throne, she had saved his life countless times. His arrogance diminished significantly as he defended himself before his elder sister, whom he hadn't seen in years. Imperial sister. It's not what you think. It was Nianqing who. Before he could finish, I leaned against Mother's shoulder. My eyes red. Mother, you lied. Uncle already has another niece. That's why he doesn't love Nianqing. With that, tears fell. Crying? Anyone can do that. You've been crying all this time, now it's my turn. My mother had always felt deeply guilty that I was born into the turbulent frontier. Seeing me suffer like this now, how could she not be furious? Yet Liang Shulan tried her old tricks again, throwing herself at my mother's feet, tears streaming down her face. Your Highness, please calm your anger. All the blame lies with this humble servant. Please don't be angry with His Majesty. If punishment is needed, take it out on me. Inger is innocent. Very well. My mother hesitated not a moment. A shriek rang out as she was kicked down to lie beside her own daughter. She lay trampled beneath her mother's feet. Seeing his beloved sister like this, the emperor's heart stirred, eldest sister. But it only poured fuel on the fire. Shut your mouth. You bear no affection for the daughter I bore with such pain, my own flesh and blood niece, yet you dare join outsiders in tormenting her? Huo Wenye. Dare you protect this vile woman again? The imperial sister's authority from her youth still held sway, compounded by years of guilt. Even the son of heaven fell silent. Liang Shulan's chin was lifted by her mother's shoe tip as she coldly declared, I hear you've been parading about as this palace's intimate confidant. Wenye took you in as his sworn sister, bestowing upon you and your daughter both a first-rank noblewoman title and a princess title. Now, you dare to humiliate this palace's daughter. Liang Shulan, have I not shown you enough favor? Princess. Liang Shulan trembled in fear, unable to speak. This was a royal banquet after all. Even if punishment was warranted, it was hardly appropriate to do so before such a grand assembly. The Empress Dowager finally spoke. Take her away first. Liang Shulan was led away by the matrons of the Empress Dowager's palace. Xia Weiniang was taken along with her. As she was led away, she still screamed, "What are you doing? I am a princess personally conferred by His Majesty. My mother is a first-rank noble lady. Let me go. Uncle Emperor. Xiao Yunheng. Brother Yunheng. Save me." After such a long separation, everyone had much to say. But mother seemed unwilling to listen to anyone. She shielded me and tried to leave. Xiao Yunheng softened again. He grabbed my skirt hem, addressing both my mother and me. "Foster mother. Nianqing. Weiniang." A sharp slap landed on his cheek, instantly reddening his face. My mother's eyes brimmed with disappointment. "Xiao Yunheng, how could I have been so blind to consider betrothing my daughter to you?" With those words, any lingering thought of pleading for Xia Weiniang vanished instantly. Xiao Yunheng, gripped by a sense of foreboding, clutched me tightly, refusing to let go. "Nianqing, what does this mean?" What else could it mean? Exactly what it said. My mother sneered. "You still dare plead for her? Do you really think you're some kind of saint? Colluding with outsiders to slander my daughter? Guards! Take him away too." Yet Xiao Yunheng seemed deaf to the commotion. His gaze fixed on me with stubborn intensity. "Nianqing, what did you mean by that earlier? We're meant to marry. You and my foster mother are angry with me, aren't you? This was my fault. I thought she only wanted you to bow your head. I never imagined she'd raise her hand against you. Nianqing, our marriage." I wrenched his hand away. "Marriage? What marriage?" He stared at me intently. "The marriage sanctioned by His Majesty and the Empress Dowager. Have you forgotten? Behind us." The Empress Dowager spoke. "That marriage was annulled the very day you left Nianqing behind with Xia Weiniang. Nianqing sought me out immediately to have it nullified. General Xiao, there is no marriage between you. My granddaughter could never marry you." Xiao Yunheng froze in place. I smiled at him as I had when we first met. "Did you hear that? Xiao Yunheng? I won't marry you. If saving you once was a mistake, then let everything return to how it was before." The eldest son of the Xiao family had offended the princess, behaved insolently before the throne, and was sent to the imperial dungeon. Once again, he became the discarded pawn. His father and stepmother, who had been deferential just moments before, immediately distanced themselves, fearing they might be implicated. It was laughable. Really. Xiao Yunheng had been sent to the frontier garrison for training precisely because of these two, a mission where death was a constant possibility. Even his mother's illness and death were not unrelated to them. Yet upon his return, a few tears shed by his father and a few words of repentance moved him. He instantly felt empathy, and father and son were united once more. It shows how magnanimous Xiao Yunheng truly is, always forgiving those who hurt him. Unlike me, I only hold grudges. After that mid-autumn banquet, the eldest princess, who had married into the Liu family and spent decades at the frontier, returned. On her very first day back, she publicly kicked a first-rank noble consort and a princess, and slapped a third-rank young general from the Xiao family. In that moment, some old ministers were suddenly reminded of years past. This princess had also acted with such decisive force to place the young emperor on the throne. Now, with the Lady of Shuo and Princess Mingning bullying her daughter in her absence, how could they possibly escape retribution? Perhaps aware of this. Thus, these past days, my uncle, the emperor, has frequently sought to appease me. He seemed to revert to the manner of our first meeting, his voice gentle with concern. "Nianqing, for all that has transpired, your uncle has wronged you. Now, I bestow upon you many gifts, all the most fashionable among the noble ladies of the capital. I shall never again allow others to mock you. No, as my niece, You shall be formally enfeoffed as a princess. Let them try to look down on you now." With a sweeping gesture of his hand, I gazed upon the jeweled hairpins and precious jade, and the imperial edict enfeoffing me as princess. Looking at this man before me, who should be my uncle, I sighed bitterly. Uncle always knew. He knew my dresses were mocked as old-fashioned by other noble ladies. Had my imperial grandmother not later provided for me, I would have endured that ridicule forever. He knew that though I was his niece, I wasn't even a princess like Xia Weiniang. That's why everyone else, seeing her bully me, felt free to follow suit. He knew all this, yet never once considered giving me what I deserved. The emperor's face flushed with embarrassment as he sighed. Don't be fooled by Weiniang's arrogance in public. She's the most timid of all. She fears that if you return, I'll stop cherishing her, and Xiao Yunheng will ignore her too. She'd cry and threaten to jump into the lake. I had no choice but to placate her first. Nianqing, you're so sensible, surely you understand your uncle's position? He looked at me hopefully. Of course I understand. He beamed. Then go speak with your mother about Weiniang and Shulan. I hadn't accepted any of those things, including that imperial edict. Lifting my gaze, I smiled faintly at his relieved expression. After all, there are degrees of closeness. No matter how dear Nianqing is, she remains merely my uncle's niece. How could she compare to a biological daughter? The emperor's expression froze abruptly. Stunned. You knew all along? I guessed it when my imperial grandmother told me about Xia Weiniang's mother's past. After all, no man, however magnanimous, could show such favor to another's child, especially when that child belonged to the man who stole his wife. The anticipated embarrassment of being exposed never materialized. Instead, the emperor burned with fury at the humiliation of being toyed with. He stormed into the imperial grandmother's palace. He argued fiercely with mother and the imperial grandmother. From childhood onward, you've always sought to outshine me in everything, and mother has always favored you most. But do not forget, I am now the son of heaven. I honor you as my imperial sister, who aided my rise to the throne. Yet knowing full well Weiniang is my child, you still detained her. When you, from beginning to end, have you ever held any reverence for the majesty of heaven in your eyes? Years of pent-up resentment erupted. Even though he still felt gratitude for the countless times his imperial sister had saved him and paved the way for his marriage, equally present was the bitter resentment of always being overshadowed and never treated with the reverence he deserved. His imperial grandmother trembled with fury. What nonsense are you spouting? She is your own flesh and blood sister. Are you turning against your sister for the sake of a spoiled brat you've raised? Don't forget the hardships your sister endured for you, facing death countless times, serving years on the frontier. I've long wanted to ask, the emperor shouted hoarsely. All these years, no matter how hard I strived or improved, all I heard from you lot was, if only she were a son. But how am I inferior to her? She has done me favors, and I have always treated her with utmost respect. But what of her? She hid Shulan's marriage plans from me back then. And now, relying on the Liu family's military might, she doesn't even hold me in regard. He pointed at his mother. When you, if you do not hand over Shulan and Weiniang today, do not blame me for showing no mercy. His mother gazed at him silently. Finally, she uttered only one sentence. So this is how you see me. The emperor fell silent. He turned his face away, paused for 2 seconds. Then he flung his sleeves and stormed off. It wasn't that he didn't want to forcibly take them away. But aside from Xiao Yunheng being detained in the imperial prison, Xia Weiniang and Liang Shulan were held captive by the Empress Dowager. He couldn't free them. Thus, he prepared to sever ties. His only option was to retrieve Xiao Yunheng first. That day, the entire court witnessed the emperor's darkened countenance. The Empress Dowager and the eldest princess held the prisoners captive. They demanded he make a choice. These were mother's exact words. All these years, for Liang Shulan and Xia Weiniang, you have granted them supreme honor. Even when they beat to death tenant farmers on the estate or killed commoners who stood in their way, you shielded them. The gold, silver, and jewels from the imperial treasury, the blood, sweat, and tears of the people flowed into their hands like water. Whether you discarded them as worthless, smashed them in disdain, or bought them only to give away, you cared not. These two deserve punishment for their crimes. If you insist on protecting them, then trample over this imperial sister. The emperor sneered coldly. What right do you have to threaten this emperor? Imperial family affairs were about to become state affairs. A storm was brewing. Xiao Yunheng sought me out immediately. Surprisingly, it wasn't to inquire about Xia Weiniang's safety. He had been pulled from the imperial dungeon by the emperor and entrusted with important responsibilities. It was a dramatic rise and fall. A moment of triumph. Yet he didn't seem particularly happy. Instead, he appeared much more weathered. Nianqing. He blocked my path and spoke. During those days in the dungeon, I thought long and hard. Only then did I realize how utterly foolish my actions were. No matter how spoiled or suicidal Xia Weiniang was. What business was it of mine? Given her status, someone would always come to her aid. You, on the other hand, were new here, utterly alone. I should have stood by you, ensuring no one dared mistreat you. Yet His voice was numb with regret. I regret it. Nianqing. I truly regret it. After leaving the dungeon, I no longer believed my father's words. I steeled my resolve and submitted a memorial to His Majesty against him. He, along with my stepmother and those bastard children, were exiled thousands of miles away yesterday. I'm tired of hearing this. Stop. General Xiao. What purpose do you serve by telling me all this? He immediately looked up at me. I wish to marry you. Nianqing. We were meant to be husband and wife. We met in youth. Growing up together. Had these events not occurred, perhaps we truly would have been meant for each other. But Xiao Yunheng, from the moment you abandoned me to utter scorn while departing with another woman, there has been no meant to be between us. I spoke calmly. You knew your feelings for Xia Weiniang, yet couldn't let go of your old affection for me. You hid her existence from me, then let her treat you with utter disrespect. Xiao Yunheng, what makes you think I, Lu Nianqing, should spend my entire life marrying a husband like you? With every word I spoke, Xiao Yunheng's face grew paler. Finally, he gave a bitter laugh. In the end, I was blind. But Nianqing, if a pouch can be mended, why can't we mend our relationship? I can't bear to watch you marry another. His eyes darkened with menace as he uttered the last words. Had he not mentioned the sachets, it would have been fine. But when he did, I pointed mockingly at the patched-up thing at his waist. This shoddy piece of junk? I, Lu Nianqing, want nothing to do with it. Under normal circumstances, anyone who dared show such disrespect to his late mother's keepsake would have met with his ruthless fury. But now, his expression merely darkened. Finally, as I brushed past him, he spoke. His Majesty has long harbored suspicion toward the Lu family, with the princess now openly defying him by sheltering the Lady of Shuo and the princess. Given His Majesty's fondness for the Lady of Shuo, it won't be long before he resorts to force. He closed his eyes briefly. My foster mother refuses to see me now. I can only warn you, do not invite disaster upon yourself. In the end, playing with fire will only burn you. I didn't pause. My mother's actions need no criticism from you. As if my mother were groveling. As if the emperor's pent-up resentment could simply dissipate. Besides, The eldest princess lived a life of justice and integrity, with treacherous ministers appearing at the emperor's side. It was only natural to purge the court of villains. When I next saw Xia Wenyang, she and Liang Shulan had already been subjected to the methods the Empress Dowager used to deal with concubines. At first, they still screamed, "How dare you! His Majesty won't let you get away with this. I demand to see His Majesty. I demand to see His Majesty. Brother Yunheng, Brother Yunheng, save me!" Xia Wenyang was the first to break. Liang Shulan, still somewhat devoted to her daughter, turned to me pleading, "Miss Lu, we were wrong. We shouldn't have deliberately troubled you. I'll take the blame for whinnying and kowtow to you. Please stop the beating. Stop it." She looked pitifully at her mother. "I beg your highness to show mercy and spare Shulan and my daughter. I have already spared you once." Liang Shulan froze. Her mother remained unflinching. "When you married into the Xie family, you secretly handed Wenye a handkerchief to signal him to take the bride, but in truth, you colluded with the fourth prince to ambush and strangle him the moment he arrived. At the time, I believed you were acting against your will and spared you. But I never imagined that years later, you would still be so insatiably greedy. Since His Majesty Wenye could not bring himself to act, this eldest princess must naturally purge the menace for our great young menace." With her disguise stripped away, Liang Shulan abandoned all pretense and burst into laughter. "I am the menace? Was it not Hua Wenye who indulged me? Why must I bear all the blame in the end? What? Did I alone enjoy the people's hard-earned wealth? Was it I who perverted justice and shielded criminals? Hua Wenye, you hypocrite! Unable to bring yourself to harm your own brother, you use me to play the righteous hero? Knowing there was no turning back, she let her words flow freely. But she failed to notice her mother standing in the shadows, sword in hand, murmuring faintly, "Indeed, in the end, she was nothing more than a useless fool." Liang Shulan trembled violently at these words. A sudden thought struck her, and she looked at her mother in terror. What are you going to do?" At that very moment, I saw figures swarming outside the door and called out, "Mother, they're here." Shoan Palace was surrounded. The great young emperor flew into a rage for the sake of a beauty. He spared no effort to break ties with his closest kin. He declared, "Shulan and I are different from everyone else. No matter who I am, she always loves me." Leading the charge was Xiao Yunheng. This display far exceeded the scale of a simple kidnapping. It resembled taking hostages. Upon seeing the emperor, Liang Shulan was overcome with ecstasy. "Your Majesty, save me! Save our Inger!" Xia Wenyang, who had been utterly despairing, now burst with renewed life. This time, she held nothing back. "Father, Brother Yunheng, you've finally come. Kill these two vile women. How dare they torture me?" She was accustomed to getting her way. Anyone who crossed her met this fate. So much so that she failed to notice the emperor ignored her words, while Xiao Yunheng's gaze held pure murderous intent. "Sister, your marriage into the Lu family and their support in elevating me to this throne were great services. Now, your role is fulfilled. The Lu family has grown too powerful, amassing troops and challenging my authority. I have already dispatched forces to apprehend Lu Yu. The Lu clan will be purged and exterminated. Rest assured. However, you remain my imperial sister, the Grand Princess of Daong, Nianqing. I shall also grant her the title of princess. You two need only enjoy your lives in the capital, free from the bloodshed of war." He watched his mother speak these arrangements with self-satisfaction. He had informed her that starting today, he had truly surpassed her. Even Xiao Yunheng had tried to reconcile before taking action. "Nianqing, the emperor said that after this matter, he would grant us a marriage decree. We can still be together. Xia Weining's smile froze, tears welling as she stared at the two men. Father. Brother Yunheng. How could you do this to me? The emperor soothed her. If you truly love her, you may be the primary wife, and she the secondary. I don't want that. I want her as my concubine. She's only fit to carry my shoes. Father and daughter envisioned their future. Then they watched as Xiao Yunheng was stabbed through the arm, jolting him back to consciousness. Who dares to assassinate him? The emperor cried out in shock. A rough voice boomed as heavy boots crushed Xiao Yunheng beneath them. I'd like to know that too. I, Lu Yu, have served my sovereign and defended the nation my entire life. Who dares harm my wife and child? Xiao Yunheng spat blood. Father! Lu Yu! Huo Wenye stared in disbelief, as if seeing a ghost. How are you here? You should be at the frontier. His words trailed off as a cold sweat beaded on his brow. Sister. Her mother's sword was already pressed against his throat. Her expression was icy. That night, after returning, she sat motionless until dawn, finally making her final decision. If he was a useless son who couldn't be supported, if he was an ungrateful wolf who turned his back, then, Your Imperial Highness, it is time for you to abdicate as well. To others, their severed ties seemed nothing more than the quarrels of a pair of star-crossed lovers. During the palace coup, Liang Shulan died first. Xia Weiniang cried out Xiao Yunheng's name just moments before being seized. As for Xiao Yunheng was beaten to the ground by father, lying like a dead dog. Even in his final moments, he still reached for the hem of my robe. Nianqing. My reaction was fierce. I commanded. What are you standing there for? Quickly. Cut the weeds at the root. The next second, his life was extinguished. In his final moments, I could still hear the Son of Heaven's impotent, furious collapse. You cannot dethrone me. Huo Wenyue. I am the true prince, the Son of Heaven of Daong. Without me, who else in the Huo family could ascend the throne? You cannot. You cannot. The scent of blood slowly spread. I walked through the bloodstains to the Buddhist hall in Shoan Palace. Sealed shut all night. Pushing open the door, I whispered, Grandmother, it's all over. The steady, wooden voice paused. A long, drawn-out sigh echoed. A palace attendant beside me respectfully addressed me. Princess. All ends, yet all begins. The end.